The FINAlsandburg village was one of the most successful urban renewal projects in the city of Chicago. Located on the near north side of the city, the Sandburg village was intended to be a catalyst to spark reinvestment in the surrounding areas of Old Town and the Gold Coast, while at the same time clearing a blighted neighborhood that was deteriorating at an accelerated pace. In the 1940s, the city of Chicago found itself in a crisis as decentralization, disinvestment, and poor housing practices plagued the inner city. The Chicago Planning Commission and the Chicago Department of Urban Renewal needed a successful housing project in the near north side that would revitalize and rejuvenate surrounding neighborhoods. The site for the FINAlsandburg village was on a plot of land that was deemed a deteriorated area beyond rehabilitation or conservation by John Cordwell, one of the head architects for the project. Located only 1.5 miles from the central business district and only a short walk from Lincoln Park and Lake Michigan, the site for the FINAlsandburg village has infinite potential. The site is also located between the affluent Gold Coast and, at the time, a young and growing Old Town. The proposed 4-block site, located in between Clark and LaSalle Streets and Division Street and North Avenue, is in a prime location, and with a successful housing project, could be a catalyst for reinvestment for the entire near north side. The existing structures mainly consisted of single-family townhouses and small local businesses. The community began deteriorating in the 1940s as suburbanization and decentralization relocated many of the residents and investment in the area. Many of the dwellings became vacant, and others became run-down and dilapidated. The community was rapidly declining and was deemed a blighted area by the Chicago Planning Commission. In 1958, the Chicago Department of Urban Renewal purchased the 4-block, 16-acre property with the intention of demolishing all existing structures and accepting bids from private investors to create a mixed-income housing development. The city of Chicago envisioned a development that would not only bring thousands of new residents to the region, but would also be an aesthetic complement to the pedestrian-based community it is situated in. By 1961, land purchases, population relocation, and land leveling were about 90% completed. In 1962, Arthur Rubloff, a prominent realtor in Chicago, and a group of investors with backgrounds in architecture, engineering, and construction were the successful bidders. With a well-qualified team of investors set in place, construction began on the FINAlsandburg village. The city of Chicago envisioned a development that would not only bring thousands of new residents to the region, but would also be an aesthetic complement to the pedestrian-based community it is situated in. By 1961, land purchases, population relocation, and land leveling were about 90% completed. In 1962, Arthur Rubloff, a prominent realtor in Chicago, and a group of investors with backgrounds in architecture, engineering, and construction were successful bidders. With a well-qualified team of investors set in place, construction began on the FINAlsandburg village. Critics were skeptical that the Sandburg village would be a success, as the first urban renewal project on the near north side, the Cabrini Green housing project, was a failure. The Cabrini Green housing project, located just a few blocks from the Sandburg village, consisted of multiple middle and high-rise apartment buildings and over 500 row houses, intended for a mixed-income neighborhood with only a small number of units reserved for public housing. However, after the first phase of construction in 1942, Cabrini Green became a public housing project. At its peak, Cabrini Green was home to 15,000 residents, with a large majority being African American. Many of the tenants of Cabrini Green came from broken families, lacked basic education, had prior convictions, or problems with drug addiction. The congregation of all these tenants within the same housing development essentially created an urban ghetto, and general upkeep of the development began to fade away. Apartments were boarded up, water and electricity wasn't available in every unit, routine building maintenance was forgotten, and the entire housing project deteriorated. Gang violence and poverty became synonymous with Cabrini Green, as this newly formed ghetto was, for most part, neglected by the police and the city of Chicago. Cabrini Green no longer exists, as the last few row houses were just recently torn down, but it will always be infamous as one of the most unsuccessful urban renewal projects in the entire United States. The developers of the FINAlsandburg village were well aware of the nearby failed urban renewal project, and were very careful in their planning to not make the same mistakes. John Cordwell, one of the main architects of the Sandburg village, attributes Cabrini Green as a primary reason for the deterioration of the near north side, stating that nearly 85% of the families in Cabrini Green were broken families with very little parental control. Cordwell, along with other investors, agreed that a screening process for all new residents in the Sandburg village would be appropriate. This way, the new development would only consist of model tenants and would not become a public housing project. At its completion, 58% of the Sandburg village's tenants received college degrees, 90% did not have children, and a whopping 97% of the tenants were Caucasian. Cabrini Green was the first and most unsuccessful urban renewal project on the north side of the city, but most urban renewal projects on the south side of Chicago were failures as well. All of the proposed projects on the south side of the city were intended to create affordable housing in poor neighborhoods. Unfortunately, a majority of these developments were failures because they did not properly address the issue of displacement of thousands of residents. The clearing of the land for the FINAlsandburg village only displaced a small population, as residents had already abandoned the area or were willing to move. This easy transition into the construction phase attributed to the overall success of the development. There was unfortunately some resistance when the city decided to demolish the First St. Paul's Evangelic Lutheran Church, a historical landmark and a rallying point for many neighborhood organizations. Founded in 1846, the massive structure was located directly in the middle of the proposed site. The Chicago Department of Urban Renewal was adamant that all existing structures be torn down, as the rundown buildings represented decline in the area. The First St. Paul's Evangelic Lutheran Church was the epitome of this decline. The structure had at one time been the majestic focal point of this neighborhood, but with nearly a century of wear and tear, the church was not what it once was. Poor upkeep, bad maintenance, and an overall lack of interest turned this once beautiful structure into a rundown rally point for small community meetings. However, the structure was a historical landmark, and residents strongly opposed its destruction. The church survived the first phases of demolition, but with the erection of the high-rise apartments and numerous townhouses in such close vicinity, resistance ceased and the structure was torn down. The city attempted to gain back some public support by building a second version of the First St. Paul's Evangelic Lutheran Church decades later on LaSalle Street. However, they were unsuccessful as the new church was less than half the size and half the magnificence of the old church. The vision of the FINAlsandburg village was to create a development that encapsulates an in-town living atmosphere with a wide variety of amenities, appearances, and residents. Arthur Rubloff and his team of investors wished to create a pedestrian-based community. Charming plazas were constructed between the high-rises to create a visually stimulating, friendly atmosphere that would encourage tenants to interact with one another. Designing a walkable environment with pleasing changes in scenery from block to block was thought to be necessary for the success of the Sandburg village. Rubloff and his team wished to create a welcoming environment where tenants feel safe to travel by foot and are encouraged to enjoy nearby restaurants, retail, and everything that the city of Chicago has to offer. The project was to be architecturally harmonious with its surrounding area, with the towering high-rise apartments of the Gold Coast, the quaint townhouses located all throughout Old Town, and the natural beauty of Lincoln Park and Lake Michigan so close by. The developers set a goal of creating a visual complement to the charm and vitality of this diverse and vibrant cosmopolitan area. At its completion in 1969, the site erected 8 high-rise apartment buildings and 44 townhouses, totaling 3,166 units. New tenants flocked to the housing development as it was widely accepted as a superb visual complement to its surrounding areas, while still reflecting the heritage and character of the city of Chicago. Currently, the Carl Sandburg Village is nearly at 100% occupancy, maintaining all the goals and values that the developers set out to accomplish. The Carl Sandburg Village became the successful mixed-income housing development that Arthur Rubloff and the city of Chicago aspired to create. The development became a catalyst for reinvestment in Old Town, the Gold Coast, and the entire near north side of Chicago.